Welcome to Men, Sex, and Tantra.
Discover what your parents, porn, and religion never taught you about being a man and having extraordinary sex. Get ready to have your mind blown and your world rocked. Okay, gentlemen, so, hey, it's Men, Sex, and Tantra, and we are continuing on with what's going on in women's heads. What's going on? What are they thinking about dating and sex? And pulling back the curtain, kind of having a real candid conversations about what women want you to know more of about them or their experiences they're having. And today, and as usual, I don't know what we're going to talk about, which is super awesome. And today I've got Judy with me. Hey, Judy, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great. This is going to be fun.
So happy to hear that. And what I've been really impressed by is how many women actually wanted to jump on here and really kind of have a place to be, to let men know something. What when you saw my post, what inspired you? What kind of message or what are things you want to talk about today on this?
Well, there was a couple of things, actually, Tanya. One of them was dating or having sex over 65, because I'll be 66 soon.
Cool.
And also the old beliefs that I've held of dating quite a few men since I was 14. Quite a few, like 20, 30, 40, 50, like, we're there. Yeah. And my experiences with men have not been good.
Uh-oh. All right.
None of them. But in my older years and having done some deep inner personal development / spiritual work, I'm beginning to understand the need for clear communication between two people. And what does clear communication mean? It doesn't mean you're supposed to know what I like or anything like that. It's going in the deeper realm of being vulnerable. And I can't wait for that to happen for me when I find the next spiritual mate partner that I want to be with. Because, so you asked what excited me was, well, let's talk to men who maybe have been through the gamut with women, but haven't found a woman who has worked on herself as deep as I have in the personal development. And let's let go of all the old conceptual ideas of how a man's supposed to show up in the bedroom. Yeah. I'll never forget one guy I was with that I actually married. The first time that we were going to do it in his basement, he came out and he turned at me and he was naked. He's like, look at me, Mr. Macho. And he's showing his muscles and he sucks in his gut and he bears out his chest. And he was a Leo. And he's almost like pounding, whoa, I'm the lion, look at me. And I thought, oh my God, do women really want this? Because it did not turn me on at all. It made me want to run away because there was nothing intimate about that. And so I think, and I don't think men have a problem with intimacy if they're given permission to be intimate and shown how to do that. I think women have an expectation of men and they shut them up and they shut them down.
Oh, I would concur with that, absolutely. That women ask for these things they want, which we've been talking about on this show, like vulnerability, presence, intimacy. And yet if a man goes there, then I've seen a lot of natural inclination of them to shut them down because it's not manly. Or, it's defying he's supposed to lead her on the adventure of her life, or he's supposed to take her, or he's supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And I agree. There's a lot of, everybody knows I believe both genders need to be accountable. All genders need to be accountable on how and responsible for how they act and do their work, because, pointing a finger at somebody else and saying, you don't know this, you don't do that, if we haven't done our own stuff first, is not cool. So this Leo pounding on his chest, I will have to say, like you, I have, and I'm probably in the hundreds. I know I'm in the hundreds of men dating wise and stuff like that. And I would have laughed. Truthfully, if I was in the room or in bed and some dude walked out and pounding his, I would have thought he was attempting humor and would have laughed. And that could have been all sorts of edgy, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, this
yeah.
guy was serious. This was him trying to show me, because now that I know who he was and who
Mhm.
he is,
Yeah.
he was very insecure about who he was.
Uh,
And so in order to build him up, he used his physicalness
I
to
get
say,
it.
look at me, aren't I something? Because he was never given permission to do that as a child or as a young man.
Uh,
And that's the problem. The biggest problem with men is they haven't been given permission to be themselves. And I'll say a quick example of my oldest son, who will be 50 in a couple of years. His father and I split when we were 17 or 18. And I raised him for quite a few years. And then he decided he wanted to go out on his dad's farm. And so his farm was like 2 miles away. So it was no big deal. But in the meantime, my oldest son had been coloring and drawing and creating things and building things. He was like an architect. He was an artist. He got out to the farm and his dad saw him drawing and said, real men go shovel shit. They don't do what you're doing.
yeah.
So once a boy is told that, they shut down. So when a woman expects them to be vulnerable, they can't, because they've been told real men don't do shit like that.
Yeah.
They shovel shit. So I feel sorry, in a sense, sorry, that men have been so repressed. And women are feeling like, well, if he's a real man, he should know what to do and how to take me on this adventure. And
Yeah.
he should know where my spots are. I mean, he's watched porn his whole life, this or that, or he's had girlfriends before. So I think I'm not putting the blame just on women, and there's no blame to be had. It's just all about communication. I just got off the phone with a client and I said, everything is about communication. And if you don't know how to communicate, you communicate from your wounds and your hurts because you want to be heard. And that's not always effective, because then you take offense and then you're on the defense.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's take a moment with that. So, like everything on this show, or everything I do, I believe that words, we use words that we understand the dictionary meaning of, but we don't understand the implications or the subtle how-tos of. For instance, it's all about communication. A lot of women think as long as they're talking at a man, they're actually communicating.
Not true.
Not right, exactly. So that talking at somebody is not what we're talking about when we're talking about communication. It's not just the act of sound coming out of your mouth. So how would you describe and define communication that isn't just blah, 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 blah?
Yeah, because you're right. It usually is, well, if you only do this, right?
Yeah, right.
It's always accusatory in a sense. So communication is being willing to be vulnerable, integral to yourself first, and be impeccable with your word, and be vulnerable enough to speak about the deepest things that you have in there. And I was never vulnerable enough because I didn't trust men, number one. Because how many of us had hundreds of relationships where we ended up saying, well, that was the pits, that didn't work, and so we don't want to be vulnerable all the time. But to be vulnerable means that you have now the opportunity to really communicate how you feel. And so here's something else about all of this. If people have problems being vulnerable and finding out how to communicate, go seek some help, or go to YouTube or Google something, because we're not taught how to communicate effectively. We're taught to say, well, if you do this, I'm going to feel better. Well, that's not communication.
Right.
That's holding them prisoner. Right? I'm holding you prisoner because if you don't do this to me or make me feel better like this, then here's the consequence. I can't feel better till you do this. So now we're holding them accountable for how I feel.
Right.
Or effective communication is not holding them accountable, but holding yourself accountable.
Okay, let's take that moment and say that again. It's not holding them accountable. Effective communication is holding ourselves accountable. All right. Okay, now I can hear men. I have a superpower. Most men think that I think just like they do. And it's true. I tried to emulate my father growing up, so that's where all this yang masculine energy of mine comes from. But here's what I hear men thinking right now. Oh, sure, yeah. tell you how I feel about, be honest. Okay, here's how that looks. All right, take, for example, my favorite thing. I'd always heard about this thing where women, ask a man, does my butt look fat in these jeans, right? Like, for years, I would hear women say, oh, yeah, I asked him, does my butt look fat in these jeans? And I would think, God, as a man, I'd be horrified. The second I heard that, first of all, I'd be horrified. Like, there is no right way to answer this question except to say no. But most women that ask, either yes, their butt does look fat in that, or they're never going to look fat in anything, right? Okay, so I've always wanted to ask a man that question, but I never wanted to ask my ass is big, by the way. I did not, and I know that my ass does look fat in these jeans, but I'd always want to say that ask that question, but not to some man that I was with that would freak out, right? So I had my best friend's husband, super rednecky guy, didn't like me very much anyway. Wasn't a fan of me. So I walked into their house one day backwards. I could see him in the kitchen, and I walked in backwards and I said, yo, do these jeans make my ass look big? And he's like, fuck yeah, but your ass is big in anything. And I thought, bravo. But I laughed, of course, but how many men can actually tell the truth and be vulnerable? Really, how many men?
They want to be, but they're cursed because the women will be mad at them. Because when a woman has to ask, she already knows that her butt is fat.
Maybe, or what is she really saying? What she's really saying.
She wants validation from somebody else because she doesn't have it within herself.
Right.
So we teach the man to say, honey, we teach them to look beyond. We teach the man to help her look beyond who she is. Because if she thinks her ass is fat, no matter what he says, she's going to call him a liar anyway, or get mad at him.
Right, exactly, right?
One with the issue. This is where the accountability comes in.
Yeah.
Right. And so for a woman to ask that is already on the scale of communication way down at the bottom, because that's not communication.
Okay, great. So this is great. So we're validating men who've been in this position, which is an impossible position to be in, because you're actually talking to somebody that no matter how much you try to make her feel better, no matter how much you try to validate her, she's not hearing it from you because she doesn't feel it herself. And no amount of telling her how beautiful she is, sexy she is, she looks great, whatever, you love her fat ass, whatever it is, she's not going to buy that. So that's great. So that's a dicey position for men, right? And
there. He'll shut down. She's teaching him how to treat her.
Yeah.
By that very sentence she asked, that very question she asked, she has now taught him what to say, how to say it, what not to say. And then she'll say, why can't you just be open and vulnerable and transparent and be honest with me?
Right, because she can't take it. What I know is that most men who love a woman, not 2 a.m., everybody's drunk in the bar kind of thing, but actually loves a woman, wants to see her smile and wants to make her happy and doesn't want to be in conflict. Most men I know do not want to be in conflict with the woman they love. They just want to see her smile. So how do we help men then? So, okay. We know that if a man's with a woman that can't communicate well, it's a danger zone all the time because there's nothing he's going to say that's right or whatever. So what do we tell him?
In regards to relationships, stay away.
So don't date somebody
you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So what are you really looking for? Everybody's looking for love. Their convoluted way of love, according to how they've been brought up, whether it's abuse love, whether it's addictive love, whether it's codependent love. I mean, everybody's looking for something that they feel is lacking in them. And so this makes it for a mixed bag of miscommunication all the way down the line. And then you bring sex into it, the most intimate act you can have.
Yeah.
And then things get really bad because it's always the woman that feels scorned, and she always withholds that sexual act from the man. Whenever she's feeling emotionally unattached, she'll withhold it from him like a weapon.
Yeah.
That destroys relationships.
Absolutely. I have this, and I have received so much criticism from this. So if you're a woman listening to this, or just hold up and let me finish. One of the things I always have when I enter into a relationship, a sexual relationship, is that I make an agreement that I will never withhold sex. Like if you, as a man that are with me, ask me for sex, we're going to have sex. It might look different. It might not always be intercourse. It may not always be this, but we're going to have sexual contact because, and it's so interesting when I say that, men look at me like, what are you actually saying? And what I'm saying is if I'm doing something and you walk in and you want to have sex, we're going to have sex. Are we going to have sex that moment? Depends what we're doing. Depends what I'm doing. If I'm on a client call, no. I wouldn't expect you to do that on a client call, but part of this opening that door, men have like freaked out about that. First they test it, which is awesome. Like walk in and say, I want to have sex. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Then they're like blown away by it so much that their desperation for the trying to get sex, like, oh, I don't have to romance her. I literally can just say, I'd like a blowjob. I'd like to have sex. I'd like to whatever, like claim what they want. And without any big hoops, get it. Women, when they hear me say that, they're like, I would never in a million years do that. They think it's like the most horrifying thing they've ever heard. Well, what if he wants sex when I'm sick? And I'm like, well, you know what? You find out a lot about a man when you take that padlock off the gate. You find out a lot about a person.
Yeah.
So if I'm like, it's clear that I'm sick and I've got some guy that I can't even breathe through my nose and he's asking me for a blowjob, what does that mean? Does that mean I should be with that person still? Like, if he's an inconsiderate asshole, just that I probably shouldn't be with him. I've never had any man abuse that, quote unquote, abuse that privilege or be agreement. It's not really a privilege, and it's agreement. So never once.
And I agree with you. Because it becomes a give and take then. When he realizes he doesn't have to spend an hour and a half with foreplay, right? That he just needs to get off. And if all it's going to take me is 10 minutes of my time to let him do or I do whatever, I used to do the same thing because I understand a man's anatomy is different or a man's sexual prowess is different than a woman's, right?
Sometimes. Like I'm that person. See, I want that same accommodation. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to walk in and say,
I want sex.
And I don't want sex to become the weapon. I don't want sex to become the hostage negotiation. I don't want, but here's the thing. I actually like sex. And I've had these conversations with women when I ask them, do you actually like sex? And most women, if they were just to have the intercourse part without the foreplay and all the rest, don't actually like sex. They like the connection. They like the presence. They like the intimacy. They like the foreplay, the anticipation. But the actual just act of sex or a blowjob, they're like, no. That's why we need all these things around it. So I think it's good to get clear as a woman what you actually like. I think it's good to get clear as a man what you're also, because men sometimes want the connection, but they're using sex to get it.
So that's where I'll never forget about 20 years ago, I got this book from Scholastic Book Club, or one of the book clubs I was part of. And it was the 101 questions to ask before you get engaged.
Oh.
And I gave it to my daughter and I was like, wow, there's some really good questions in here. And of course she potted because she was of the generation where you just go out and date and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's excellent if that was prerequisite for anything, because people go into dating and then the sexual relationship, I don't know what to expect. Well, if the guy wants only certain things and you're in the middle of it and not knowing what you're going to get.
Yeah.
This is where I think, well, the thing nowadays that people are saying before they even get off Zoom or WhatsApp or Messenger with someone is, are you vaccinated or not?
Mm-hmm.
Because some won't date either or, right?
Yeah, it's funny how we've taken a hard stand about that, but other things like STD checks, whatever else we don't.
I know.
Don't even like it. Oh my God.
Like the woman doesn't want sex, but wants foreplay only, and she's going to hate having sex. So this is where I think we need to, and this is the personal development work I've done, is we really need to find out who we are and what we like. And I don't think women have been given that opportunity. I mean, I was pregnant at 15 and married at 16, and then 5 kids later and 3 husbands later. Do you think I ever found out who the hell I was in all those years? No, I was surviving, raising all those kids and 3 husbands. It wasn't until my late 40s, early 50s that I just went, holy shit, I'm a real person here. Who the hell am I? And what do I like? And what do I want? And most women don't know that.
They don't. And in fact, they don't know it. My daughter's going to be 19 this year, and we have very candid conversations. She's in college, and it's great. And I've told her, I said, you're going to, a lot of your friends are going to talk about sex, and like they're having a great time. I said, but I know that after I start talking to women after 45, when women start coming to me to get over sexual trauma or to find out why their sex life is crap, that what they thought they were having a good time with wasn't actually having a good time. And so it isn't. So now let's hit some age stuff, because I know that women over 45, 50, things like that, society will tell us that we're done sexually, that it's over, that's it, that we're not interested. And what I always say, if at menopausal age, a woman takes that pass, like, oh, I'm in menopause, I'm not interested in sex anymore, she probably wasn't really liking sex
in the first place. But I want to say that my sex life got better post-menopause, which I didn't expect it to decline. And, I was the right thing.
Yeah, right. I expected that I like sex. I'm interested in all aspects of it. Maybe it'll change. Maybe what I like will change, which is okay too. But, my thing was dating. I started dating lots of younger men. Mm-hmm. And that was awesome.
Yeah, I've had a lot of 20 years, my junior coming
after me. Yeah.
And one of the things women use too about the menopause is, well, my vagina is dry. Yeah. Well, the thing about menopause is, because we've got so many toxins within our system, we're going to go through some heavy duty symptomatic things, and there's no need for that, because menopause should be a graceful exit out of childbearing years.
Yeah. Well, for me,
for freedom. Yeah.
Well, for me, it was like, I had a period 1 month, and the next month I didn't ever again. That was it. That was my menopause story, was here I have periods, here I don't anymore. Voila, done. 48 years old. It's over. Oh my God. But yeah, so I think that the struggle, what I want men to hear from us, because I'm going to be 61 this year, and you were saying.
I'll be 66 in March.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. We are not dead, dried up, and pruning away. If you don't use your vagina, it definitely will get more dry after menopause, because hormones do change. But if you're using your vagina, then it doesn't suffer the same way. And that's whether it's self-using or with somebody else. You don't have to have a partner, but I want men to hear that too, that it's not like, oh, older women.
That sentence, no.
No, absolutely not. Like I said, some of the best sex, more horny, more whatever after all of that. And part of it is the freedom you were talking about.
The freedom, because you're not going to get pregnant, and you don't have kids, and there's no more judgment around. So it's like, you can just relax and be yourself. Your kids aren't going to come rushing into the bedroom. You're not going to get pregnant again. You really have the freedom to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. The freedom to explore. And we've probably finally gotten over the, oh my God, my body's got to be perfect, because God knows it's not. My body's worse than it's ever been as far as physically looking. But it's better than it's ever been when it comes into a sensation, pleasure, and all the rest of that. So visually, we've let go that we have to look probably a certain way. After a certain age, you're just kind of.
Some, not many. Yeah. There aren't many women that are able to do that yet.
Really? Because I'm kind of like, it's all downhill physically from here. Body.
Definitely.
Gravity's real.
Gravity's real, but I'm saying most women can't accept that about themselves.
Well, then aging's going to be tough.
It is for most women.
Yeah. I'm looking at
the majority of women can't handle it.
Well, look, we get bombarded by, youth is it. And I get it. I can look at younger bodies, both men and women, and go, wow, yeah, that was awesome when I looked like that. I can see my face changing. I can see all that happening. And what I'm looking forward to is the evolution of that landscape. Like,
Mhm.
wow, this texture is interesting. Wow, what's my face going to look like when I'm 123? Craggy like a Sahara desert, kind of like, think about all that cool texture and how interesting as we age we
Yeah,
start to look. So I'm kind of going with that because I plan, the alternative is not okay for me. I plan to live a long time.
me too.
So I better get cool with the aging thing. All right, so there's a little bit about older women for you guys hearing this. Okay, so let's put some spin on here. So communication, we started with that, and communication being the key. We've talked about the fact that sometimes even if a man's communicating, it's a lost cause if he's hooked up with somebody who's talking at him, wanting him to communicate, but they're not communicating. They're just talking at them, right? Um, the other part in that is that weird part when a woman has a vulnerable conversation with you and you do with her, and all of a sudden she wants to have sex and you want to run for the hills because men feeling vulnerable isn't usually sexy for them. But women feel really sexy and attached, wanting to connect when they are. So that God knows why that was created because that is a weird thing. Just know, gentlemen, that when you feel your worst, vulnerable, weakest, non manly, she's probably
You're
gonna
the
want you.
sexiest.
You're the sexiest right there.
Yeah.
That heart connection. All
Yeah.
right. So what can you put a positive spin on this? What do you love about men? What would you wish they did more of in a way that is understandable?
I love the male energy and what it's becoming when they start to really look at themselves in a new way and let go of some of the old beliefs. I love their strength. I love their weakness. I love their vulnerability. I love that they can take. And here's the thing about men. Men always do what they need to do for themselves. You've ever noticed if they need to get the hell away from something, if they need self-care, they just do it. I admire that in men. Women will go, I don't have time. I got to get the groceries. I got to do the ironing. And men will say, no, I'm out of here. I'm going to the golf course. I'm going to play darts. Men know how to look after themselves. And I admire that in men. I really do. And if men would be willing to allow their vulnerability to come out, even if you don't know how that woman's going to react, it's going to teach you that your vulnerability is part of the sexiness, part of the masculine that you are, that it's part of one. Because I think men either have to be like my ex-husband was all macho, right? And not vulnerable
Yeah.
either. Where if you can embrace all the sides of you, that's when you become more human, you know, instead of segregating yourself that you've been taught to do.
Yeah. So I know that online, I know that polarity, I know all these big topics of the man, David Dida, whom I can't stand, leading, the man has to be the flag and the pole in the sand to hold up the woman's emotional crazy town. All of these things are not helpful. Um,
No.
and leading her on the adventure of her life all the time, like all the pressure that I want to say to men, all the pressure that men have put upon them
Mhm.
based on weird things. I want all the men to listen. You've been listening to, I think you might be my fourth woman talking, that almost every single woman that's said anything is about connection, vulnerability, presence, letting go of that archaic, you got to be macho. So it's funny that here that men are being taught all this embrace your masculine, be the warrior thing, and women are all saying, yeah, but don't stand around beating your chest.
You can be it all. I mean, be a lump on the floor and cry your eyes out 1 minute. And then when you need to, go beat the chest when it's time. Like just allow yourself to be who you are, letting go of all the old stigma. And if you start to do that, you're one sexy beast.
Yeah, being who you are in your entirety, whatever that frickin' means to you, is
Yeah.
what you need to be. I mean, certainly that's the goal that I work on for myself. I'm pretty sure that's the one you work on for you. How to show up in my entirety, however that is. I can be said, oh, you need to be more feminine. What the heck does that even mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that mean I blush when a man I'm attracted to compliments me?
Mhm.
People don't expect
Me
that.
too.
Right? Exactly. So we're all things. Let's embrace it all because then we can dance the dance together. We can be strong for you men when you're not in that strength. You can be strong for us when we're not in that strength. And if we all choose to show up and take, so once again, courage, I believe that the most important, I think I said this in the last one, most important relationship attribute you could ever have is courage because it takes courage to show up authentically, ask for what you want.
Yes,
Yeah, right?
yes, takes courage.
Yeah. So, guys, go out there and find your courage to show up who you are so that you can find your match. Because
Mhm.
that's the only way we find our match is when we're really who we are. Do you realize it? I was told it takes 7 years, 7 years for people to truly become themselves in a relationship. And you wonder why there's that thing called the 7 year itch and why breakups
Yeah,
happen in 7 years.
yeah, because it's like, holy shit, what did I get into?
Right, exactly. So show up who you are in the beginning of it. All right, guys. I think I've got a few more women lined up to tell us what's up. We've got lots of age range. I think the youngest woman we talked to was 28. And now we've got beautiful Judy here at 66. And so we're getting a wide range from lots of different places. I think you're Canadian, right? Canadian
I
bound?
am.
Yep. So we've had Canada and Australia and the States, and we've got more coming. So awesome. Stay tuned. I hope you're enjoying it. And gentlemen, if you have questions that you want women to answer, you should be hitting me up and finding out, letting me know so we can get those answered. See you on the next one. Bye.